Pucallpa, Peru, on a tributary of the Amazon River, Juan Guevara, head of agriculture for this region, became alarmed by the effects of cutting down the tropical forests to make way for farms and grazing land. Because there are no leaves, there is no replenishment of nutrients to the thin topsoil. To combat the resulting malnutrition, Juan Guevara takes a new approach. Fish farming, or aquaculture, is an ancient practice, a means by which many peoples around the world provide for their food and livelihood. In Pucallpa, Peru, Juan Guevara is engaged in a project that holds the promise of aquaculture playing another role. There, it may contribute to the protection of one of the world's most valuable natural resources, the Amazonian rainforest. Like many river basins in the area, the Pucallpa region has attracted tens of thousands of agricultural migrants from the mountains and cities. Guevara came to Pucallpa as an agricultural researcher. His job was to advise people on how best to gain a living from the land. But he was uneasy about many of the ways this was being done. Mining, timbering, and agricultural projects were taking a toll on the landscape.
In the Amazon region, extractive activities have been steadily increasing the scope of their operations. This has caused very serious deforestation. Fish farming, unlike these extractive activities, is different. It can be undertaken in the tropics without any drastic effects on the environment.
Peru is a land of dramatic contrasts, from the broad deserts that line the Pacific coast, to the fertile valleys along the western slope of the Andes, to the towering mountains themselves, to the Amazon basin, which begins in the streams that descend the mountain's eastern slope. Here, in the Amazon basin, the tropical forest begins. Like others of its kind around the world, the Amazon forest is a fragile and endangered ecosystem. In a tropical forest, nature assumes some of its most extraordinary and beautiful forms. But as striking as forest life is to the human eye, its greatest benefits are harder to see. They have to do with the most basic elements of life: soil, atmosphere, and climate, food, water, fuel, and shelter. It's not only the teeming life of the forest that is threatened when the forest is cut down, but life, including human life, everywhere on the globe. Forests once covered 6 million square miles of the Earth's surface. We've lost more than a third of that already, and the rate of destruction is going up. Today, nearly 50 acres a minute are cut down, an area the size of Great Britain each year. In the history of the Earth, plants were the first organisms on dry land. In order for other life forms to evolve, energy had to be captured from the non-living environment. This task fell to the plants, which accomplished it by photosynthesis. Plants capture the sun's energy and use it to produce foods which other organisms consume. The tropical forests, with more plants and more kinds of plants than any other environment, play a large role in regulating the Earth's environment. Because tropical forests are so dense with plant life, they are often shrouded by clouds. When a stretch of forest is destroyed, the loss of these clouds brings a dramatic decrease in rainfall over a wide territory. When trees are cleared and crops planted, only a season or two of farming is possible. Then the plot is abandoned. All around the world, land cleared in rainforests will never be fertile again. The heavy rains have washed away the topsoil, and the layer below, now exposed to the sun, takes on a brick-like character. Less than 1% of the Amazon basin can support sustained cultivation. Clearing the forest brings erosion. Erosion is more than a scar on the landscape. It creates silt, which clogs rivers, damages irrigation, and leads to flooding. In Peru, Juan Guevara has seen deforestation bring many of these problems. The annual floods now come faster and deeper. Nutrients washed away are not replaced, and the river waters themselves grow poorer. The supply of fish during the rainy season drops considerably. Here, in Pucallpa, where the influx of farmers is intensifying, the dangers of deforestation are very real. In turning to aquaculture, Guevara and his colleagues were turning to a practice that could feed and employ many of these immigrants without damaging the tropical forest. What is unique about integrated aquaculture is how self-supporting it is. In other parts of the world, fish farming requires expensive grain food. As Guevara explains, that is not the case here.
The people who are immigrating into this area have not traditionally been fish farmers. So the scheme we're putting into effect here is integrated with the kind of agriculture they do practice. But since their traditional farming methods produce few byproducts, and since protein is very expensive, we've integrated animals into the process.
Guevara sought a method that was simple and small-scale and that used available livestock. Most people in the area already had the few pigs, ducks or chickens that are needed. The animals drop their wastes into the pond from raised platforms. The wastes support a population of plankton, which the fish eat along with insects and leaves.
These fish are herbivorous species with a short food chain. They grow very quickly on a food base of mainly vegetable products.
The results are indeed dramatic. Annual yield of fish for a 2.5-acre pond is 11,500 pounds, an average of more than 30 pounds per day. This brings nutritional benefits to the family and community in the form of much-needed protein and provides a considerable surplus that can be taken to market. Guevara and the other members of his research team, called Evita, work hard to make the fish ponds productive. They determine the ideal balance of animal wastes that go into the pond. They've studied more than 300 varieties of Amazonian fish in order to find the ones best suited to this kind of pond. So far, the choices are the gamitana, the boquichico, and the sabalo.
The gamitana and sabalo are native species that bring a high price commercially. But since they're migratory species that don't reproduce well in ponds, we're experimenting with artificial reproduction.
For Guevara, it was important to work with species native to this part of the Amazon basin. Imported species might find their way into the Ucayali and other nearby rivers, where they would compete with the native stock. During the long rainy season, when the swift rivers overflow their banks, the catch from local streams is meager. The cost of fish doubles or triples, and malnutrition is a severe problem. The aquaculture project allows for a steady supply during the entire year. Guevara, his assistant Guadalupe Contreras, and other members of the Evita team provide fish fingerlings and plankton to families who want to begin their own fish culture. They provide advice on how to build and maintain the pond. Individual families can manage their own ponds. So far, 6 families have begun to do so, and their sense of pride and enthusiasm is clear. The initial outlay for the animals, along with the cost of feeding and maintaining them, is very low. A tractor has to be hired for the initial digging. Banks in the area provide loans for this service. Low cost and high productivity are important for the role the Pucallpa project plays in the protection of the forest. Guevara feels that the small-scale, integrated aquaculture methods developed in Pucallpa can be applied anywhere in the Amazon basin. Deforestation, population growth, and malnutrition occur in many parts of the region. There's abundant reason, based on what we know about the role of rainforests in our global ecology, to try to save these precious resources. The forests are so rich with life that the number of species lost when an area of tropical forest is destroyed is 10 times the number lost when other environments disappear. Near Pucallpa, deforestation endangers jaguars and threatens the rare pink dolphins that swim in the Ucayali River. There's also reason to try to save tropical forests on grounds of what we don't know. When we consider all the medical and industrial substances we depend on that come from the rainforests, the odds favor the likelihood that we can derive great benefits from the 5 out of 6 species that we have not yet even identified. The Amazon forest needs protection, to be sure, but it cannot simply be fenced off. Its future can also be made more secure when the expanding population at its edges find ways to prosper without harming the forest. The work of Juan Guevara and the Evita team allows the people of Pucallpa to do just that. Integrated aquaculture is a way that families can produce their own food with minimal damage to the fragile environment around them.